The old Victorian house on Elm Street stood at the edge of Willow Creek, a quiet suburb where the lawns were always manicured and the streetlights hummed softly after dusk. It had been on the market for months, priced just low enough to tempt first-time buyers like Sarah Ellis, a 32-year-old graphic designer who'd relocated from the city for a fresh start. The realtor had called it a charming fixer-upper, with its wraparound porch and tall windows that caught the afternoon sun. Sarah saw potential, space for her home office, a backyard for the dog she planned to adopt someday. She signed the papers on a crisp October morning, keys in hand by noon. That first evening, as the sun dipped below the tree line and painted the sky in muted oranges, Sarah unpacked boxes in the living room. The house smelled of aged wood and faint lavender from the previous owner's sachets. She flicked on the lights, noting how the bulbs cast long shadows across the hardwood floors. Upstairs, her bedroom overlooked the sleepy neighborhood. Identical ranch-style homes with minivans in driveways, kids' bikes leaning against fences. It felt safe, ordinary. The kind of place where neighbors waved from their porches and block parties happened in summer. Downstairs, the kitchen was functional. Linoleum counters, a gas stove that worked on the first try. Sarah heated a frozen pizza, the kind with extra cheese, and ate it standing at the counter while scrolling through emails on her phone. Work could wait until tomorrow. For now, this was home. She poured a glass of red wine, savoring the quiet. No traffic noise, no sirens, just the distant bark of a dog and the rustle of leaves in the wind. As night settled in, Sarah decided to explore the rest of the house. The basement door was off the kitchen, a heavy oak panel with a brass knob that turned smoothly. She'd glanced at it during the walkthrough, but the realtor had kept it brief. Just storage down there. A bit musty, but nothing a dehumidifier can't handle. Sarah flipped the switch at the top of the stairs. The bulb buzzed to life, illuminating a set of worn wooden steps descending into dimness. She descended halfway, phone flashlight in hand, peering into the concrete space below. Shelves lined one wall, empty except for a few cobwebbed jars. The air was cooler, carrying a faint, earthy scent like damp soil after rain. Pipes ran along the ceiling, and in the corner sat an old washing machine that looked like it dated back to the 70s. Satisfied it was just a typical basement, nothing sinister, she climbed back up and locked the door. Or at least she thought she did. Sleep came easily that night, wrapped in fresh sheets on a mattress still smelling of the store. The house creaked occasionally, settling into the cool air, but Sarah was used to that from her apartment building. Around 2 a.m., though, something pulled her from a dreamless rest. A low sound, muffled and rhythmic, like water dripping steadily onto tile. She lay still, eyes open in the dark, listening. It was coming from below, faint taps, irregular but persistent. Drip, pause, drip, drip. Her mind raced to explanations. A leaky pipe, maybe, from the old plumbing the inspector had mentioned, or condensation on the windows downstairs. She rolled over, pulling the covers tighter, willing herself back to sleep. Houses made noises. It was normal. Morning brought sunlight filtering through the curtains, and Sarah shook off the unease with coffee and a run along the neighborhood trails. Willow Creek was everything she'd hoped. A loop of paved paths winding past ponds and picnic benches, joggers in matching athleisure nodding hello. She stopped at the local diner on Main Street for breakfast, a booth by the window, eggs over easy with toast. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with a name tag reading Doris, chatted about the weather. "Fall's coming early this year. You new around here?" Sarah nodded, mentioning the house on Elm. Doris smiled. "Nice spot. Quiet family that lived there before, moved to Florida for the grandkids. No red flags, just small-town warmth." Back home, Sarah dove into unpacking. She set up her desk in the spare room, hung curtains in the living room, and even tackled the garage, sorting boxes of books and art supplies. The day passed in a productive blur. the basement sound forgotten amid the clatter of chores. By evening, she treated herself to takeout from the Thai place downtown, pad see ew and spring rolls, eaten on the couch while binge-watching a sitcom. Laughter from the TV filled the space, chasing away any lingering solitude. But as the clock ticked past midnight, there it was again. Sarah was in the kitchen, rinsing dishes, when the taps resumed. Clearer this time, echoing up from the closed basement door, drip, scrape, not just water, something else like nails on concrete, faint but deliberate. She froze, sponge in hand, water running in the sink. The house was silent otherwise, no rain outside, no wind rattling the gutters. She turned off the faucet, listening harder. Drip, scrape, drip. It stopped abruptly, as if aware of her attention, leaving only the hum of the refrigerator. Curiosity tugged at her. Sarah dried her hands and approached the door, ear pressed to the wood. Nothing. She twisted the knob, half expecting it to be stuck, but it opened easily. The stairs descended into shadow, the single bulb still off. Flipping the switch, she watched the light flicker on, steady this time. "Hello?" she called softly, feeling foolish. No echo, no response. The basement looked the same, empty shelves, dusty floor. She stepped down a few treads, scanning the corners. The washing machine sat inert, no hoses leaking, pipes dry. She even checked the far wall, where a small window let in a sliver of moonlight, grimy but intact. Back upstairs, Sarah locked the door firmly and double-checked the bolt. Probably just the house adjusting, she told herself. Old places had their quirks. She Googled basement noises in old houses on her phone, skimming articles about thermal expansion and settling foundations. Reassuring, if a bit vague. Still, as she climbed into bed, the quiet felt heavier, the darkness pressing in. She left the hallway light on, a small glow spilling under the door. The next morning, over cereal at the kitchen table, Sarah noticed something off. The basement door, she was sure she'd locked it the night before, was ajar by an inch, not wide open, just enough to let a draft whisper through. She pushed it shut, testing the latch. It clicked securely. A slip of the hand, maybe, or the wood swelling in the humidity. She shrugged it off and headed to her home office, diving into a freelance project to keep her mind occupied. By afternoon, the unease had faded into the rhythm of routine. Sarah walked to the corner store for groceries, milk, bread, a six-pack of craft beer from the local brewery. The clerk, a guy in a flannel shirt, recommended the IPA. "It's different after a long day," she laughed, chatting about the mild weather. On the way back, she waved to a neighbor watering his lawn, an older man with a friendly nod. Willow Creek was settling around her like a well-worn glove. That evening, as she grilled a burger on the back patio, smoke curling into the twilight, the sounds returned. Not taps this time, but a soft murmur, like voices hushed behind a wall. Indistinct, layered, rising from the basement like steam from a kettle. Sarah paused, spatula in hand, the sizzle of meat the only other sound. She set the burger aside and went inside, heart picking up a notch. The door was closed, latched, but the murmur persisted, low and insistent, words she couldn't quite catch. Was it the neighbors? No, their houses were too far, and the windows were shut. She didn't open the door this time. Instead, she stood there listening, a chill tracing her spine despite the warmth of the kitchen. The murmur faded after a minute, dissolving into silence. Sarah returned to her burger, but it tasted like ash. That night, sleep was fitful, her mind replaying the sounds in loops. What if it was animals? Squirrels in the walls? But basements didn't have walls like that. Or maybe the previous owners had left something behind, a radio, forgotten and tuned low. By dawn, resolve hardened. She'd check it properly tomorrow, maybe call a handyman from the yellow pages. For now, the house held its secrets, wrapped in the ordinary hum of suburban life. But deep down, Sarah felt the first thread of doubt unraveling. A quiet whisper that the normalcy she'd bought into might be thinner than it seemed. The days blurred into a tentative routine, Sarah convincing herself that the house was just testing her patience, like an old car that rattled before smoothing out on the highway. She threw herself into work, her laptop screen a portal to deadlines and client revisions that kept the unease at bay. Mornings started with black coffee brewed in the drip machine, the aroma filling the kitchen as she reviewed emails. Afternoons meant walks around the block, past the row of two-story colonials with their American flags fluttering on porches and sprinklers arcing over emerald grass. Willow Creek had that postcard quality. Kids on scooters after school, the occasional mail truck rumbling by with its familiar beep. By Wednesday, Sarah had scheduled the handyman. His name was Tom Riley, recommended by the realtor. A burly guy in his 40s with a pickup truck loaded with tools. He arrived right on time, toolbox in hand, wiping his boots on the mat before stepping inside. "Heard you got some noises downstairs," he said, his voice carrying the gravelly twang of someone who'd grown up in these parts. Sarah nodded, leading him to the basement door. She hadn't heard much since that murmured evening, just the occasional creak, which she chalked up to the foundation shifting in the cooling soil. Still, better safe than sorry. Tom flipped on the light and descended the stairs with the confidence of routine inspections. Sarah hovered at the top, arms crossed, watching his silhouette move through the dim space. He tapped pipes, shone a flashlight into corners, even knelt by the washing machine to check for loose parts. "Plumbing's solid," he called up after 10 minutes. "No leaks, no critters that I can see. These old Victorians, though, they talk. Wood expands and contracts, echoes play tricks, probably nothing." He climbed back, dusting his hands. "If it keeps up, could be insulation settling. I can spray foam the gaps for $50. Sarah paid him on the spot, a crisp 20 and a 10 from her wallet. Relief washed over her as he drove off, taillights fading down Elm Street. See? Just the house being quirky. She spent the rest of the day reorganizing the pantry, stacking cans of soup and boxes of pasta in neat rows, the mundane task grounding her. That night, she invited a co-worker over for dinner, Elena, who'd driven out from the city for a freelance meetup. They ordered pizza from the local joint, the kind loaded with pepperoni and mushrooms, and spread out on the living room rug with laptops, brainstorming logo ideas until the pepperoni grease stained the cardboard box. Elena glanced around approvingly. "This place has character. Way better than my shoebox apartment." They laughed about city rent hikes, the conversation easy and distracting. As the evening wound down, Sarah walked her to the door, the porch light buzzing softly. "Thanks for coming out. Feels less echoey with company." Elena waved it off, sliding into her sedan. "Any time. Call if you need a break from suburbia." Alone again, Sarah locked up, the bolt sliding home with a satisfying click. She poured a nightcap, herbal tea this time, chamomile to ease into sleep, and settled on the couch with a book, a thriller about a woman unraveling secrets in a coastal town. The words pulled her in, but around page 50 it started. Not the taps or murmurs, but something subtler, a rhythmic thump, muffled like footsteps pacing below the floorboards. Slow, deliberate, left-right, pause, left. She set the book down, ears straining. The clock on the mantel ticked steadily. Outside, a car passed on the street, headlights sweeping the curtains. It wasn't imagination. The thumps continued, faint but insistent, as if someone or something was measuring the basement's confines. Sarah rose, padding to the kitchen in her socks. The door was shut, latch secure. She pressed her palm against the wood, feeling for vibration. There, a low pulse syncing with the sounds. Her breath caught, mind flashing to Tom's inspection. He'd found nothing, maybe the neighbor's basement. But no, the houses were spaced apart, yards separating foundations. She stepped back, rubbing her arms against the sudden chill. The thumps faded after a few minutes, leaving the house in that oppressive quiet, the kind that amplified every swallow and heartbeat. Sleep evaded her that night. Sarah tossed in bed, the sheets tangling around her legs, replaying the evening. Elena hadn't heard a thing, had she? No, they'd been too absorbed in work. By 3 a.m., she gave up, slipping downstairs for water. The kitchen clock glowed, 3:07, its digital face mocking her fatigue. As she filled a glass from the tap, a new sound emerged, a soft scrape, like fabric brushing concrete, directly from the basement. Not pacing this time, more like shifting, settling into place. She froze, glass midway to her lips, water dripping onto the counter. The scrape repeated, slower, then stopped. Doubt crept in like fog off the creek. Was she hearing things? Stress from the move, maybe? Or the isolation of working from home? Sarah had read about it online once, new environments playing havoc with senses. She finished her water and returned upstairs, but the bedroom felt smaller, the shadows in the corners deeper. She left the bedside lamp on low, its warm glow a fragile barrier against the dark. Thursday dawned grey, clouds hanging low over the suburbs like a held breath. Sarah skipped her run, opting for yoga in the living room instead, stretches and deep breaths to center herself. It helped somewhat. She emailed Tom a thank you, mentioning the thumps, but he replied quickly, "Houses do that, monitor it." Reassuring, yet vague. By noon, she was on a call with a client, discussing color palettes for a non-profit's website, her voice steady despite the undercurrent of distraction. The neighborhood sounds filtered in. A lawnmower buzzing 2 doors down, birds chattering at the feeder she'd hung that morning. Afternoon brought a delivery, a package from an online retailer, art supplies she'd ordered weeks ago. Sarah signed for it at the door, chatting briefly with the driver about the impending rain. Unpacking in the spare room, she arranged sketch pads and markers on shelves, the creative ritual soothing. But as she taped a box shut, the thumps returned, fainter during daylight, yet unmistakable. Pause, thump, pause, like waiting. She ignored it, blasting a playlist of indie folk tunes to drown them out, the guitar strums vibrating through the speakers. Evening fell with a drizzle pattering the windows, turning the streets shiny under street lamps. Sarah cooked pasta, simple spaghetti with marinara from a jar, eating at the table while scrolling neighborhood forums on her phone. Posts about fall cleanups, a lost cat on Oak Lane, recommendations for plumbers. Nothing about haunted houses or weird noises. Comforting in a way, she washed dishes methodically, the hot water steaming the air, when the murmurs came back. Not hushed voices this time, but fragments, syllables weaving through the floor, too garbled to form words. Help! Low? No, that wasn't right. More like echoes of her own name, stretched and distorted. Sa. Ra. She dropped a plate into the suds, soap bubbles splashing. It couldn't be. The sounds sharpened for a moment as if responding to her slip, then receded into the patter of rain. Sarah dried her hands, heart thudding, and grabbed her phone. She paced the living room, dialing Elena. "Hey, you free to talk?" Her voice came out higher than intended. Elena, sensing the edge, listened as Sarah described the progression. The taps, scrapes, thumps, now this. Sounds creepy. Want me to come over tomorrow? Or call someone else? Sarah hesitated. No, it's probably nothing, just getting to me. They chatted about lighter things, weekend plans, a new coffee shop in town, until the murmurs didn't return. Hanging up, she felt a flicker of isolation, the house's walls closing in like a too-tight embrace. She double-locked the doors, checked windows, even peered out at the rain-slicked street, empty, save for a neighbor's porch light glowing yellow. That night, lying awake, Sarah's mind spun scenarios. Faulty wiring causing audio hallucinations, carbon monoxide from the old furnace. She'd buy a detector tomorrow. Or maybe the previous owners. Doris had said they moved for grandkids. But what if they'd left something personal, a recording device forgotten in the clutter? The doubt gnawed, blurring the line between rational and fanciful. The house wasn't just old, it felt aware, its sounds a subtle dialogue she couldn't decipher. As thunder rumbled distant, Sarah pulled the covers high, wondering if morning would bring clarity or only deepen the riddle. The basement waited below, patient in its silence, holding whatever truths or illusions it concealed. Friday morning arrived with a stubborn drizzle that turned the neighborhood into a watercolor blur, the kind of gray that seeped into everything and made the coffee taste sharper. Sarah lingered at the kitchen table longer than usual, her mug cooling untouched as she stared at the basement door across the room. It looked innocent enough in the daylight, a plain slab of wood with a fresh coat of paint she'd applied herself last weekend, the latch gleaming from her recent polish. But last night's murmurs clung to her like damp clothes, twisting her name into something unrecognizable, almost mocking. She shook her head, forcing a routine into motion. Work emails first, then the hardware store for that carbon monoxide detector. Practical steps, answers in facts, not shadows. The drive to Main Street was short, wipers swishing rhythmically against the windshield, the radio tuned low to a local station playing classic rock ballads. Willow Creek's main drag felt comforting in its familiarity. The bakery with its neon open sign flickering through the mist, the auto shop where mechanics huddled under awnings, smoking and chatting about the forecast. Sarah parked outside the hardware store, a squat building with aisles of lumber and power tools that smelled of sawdust and oil. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with a ponytail and a name tag reading Barb, rang up the detector and a pack of batteries. "Smart move," Barb said, bagging it. "These old houses can be sneaky with fumes." Sarah nodded, forcing a smile, but the words landed heavier than intended. Sneaky, like the house was playing a game. Back home, she installed the device on the kitchen wall, its digital display blinking green. No alerts, no invisible threats. Relief flickered, brief as a match flame. She settled at her desk, the spare room's window framing the rain-swept backyard, where leaves plastered the fence like forgotten notes. The freelance project demanded focus, tweaking vectors for a client's branding kit, the screen's glow a steady anchor. Hours slipped by, interrupted only by the ping of incoming messages and the occasional rumble of thunder rolling in from the hills. Lunch was a turkey sandwich wrapped in foil, eaten one-handed while scrolling property records on her laptop. Curiosity had nudged her there after Elena's call, public files on the house at 142 Elm Street. The records painted a mundane history, built in 1892, owned by a series of families through the decades. Mill workers, teachers, a retired couple who'd lived there longest, the ones Doris mentioned. No liens, no incidents logged. Just a footnote about a minor flood in the 70s, basement water damage repaired with concrete sealant. Sarah leaned back, chair creaking against the floorboards. Water. That could explain the early drips, maybe echoes trapped in the pore, but the thumps, the murmurs. She closed the tab, unwilling to chase ghosts online. Not yet. Afternoon waned into a humid hush, the rain easing to a fine mist that beaded the windows. Sarah stepped out to the mailbox, her sneakers squelching on the wet grass. The neighborhood was subdued, porch swings idle. Driveways empty, save for the occasional soccer mom's SUV pulling in with grocery bags. Across the street, the older neighbor she'd waved to before was out front, raking sodden leaves into piles. His name was Mr. Harlan. She'd learned from a quick chat last week. He'd lived on Elm for 30 years. "Everything settling in okay?" he called, leaning on his rake. Sarah crossed the lawn, the air thick with the scent of wet earth. "Yeah, just the usual new house stuff. You know how it is." She hesitated, then added, "The basement's been making some noises. Nothing major, but odd." Mr. Harlan paused, his expression neutral, eyes flicking toward her house. "Old places do that, the Victorians especially, pipes and beams talking back. The folks before you, the Millers, never complained. Quiet couple." He resumed raking, the scrape of metal on leaves punctuating his words. "If it's bad, get a second opinion from the inspector, but probably just the rain settling things." She thanked him, retreating inside with a nod, the conversation leaving her oddly unsatisfied. No stories of hauntings, no warnings, just more assurances wrapped in small-town politeness. The detector still read green when she glanced at it, mocking her growing fixation. She tried to shake it off with a hot shower, steam fogging the bathroom mirror as water drummed against the tiles. Clean, scented. Dinner would be simple. Stir-fry from the fridge veggies, rice bubbling on the stove, normalcy as armor. But as twilight deepened, painting the living room in bruised purples, the sounds evolved. Sarah was midway through chopping bell peppers when it began. Not thumps or scrapes, but a low hum, vibrational, like the distant buzz of a tuning fork resonating through the floor. It vibrated in her chest first, subtle, then sharpened into a pattern. Hum, pause, hum, syncing with her pulse. She set the knife down, wiping her hands on a towel, and moved to the door. Locked. Of course. The hum persisted, threading upward, weaving into the sizzle of oil heating in the pan. She turned off the burner, the sudden silence amplifying it. It wasn't mechanical, no furnace kick-on, no fridge cycle. More organic, like breath held too long, then released. Her phone buzzed on the counter, a text from Elena. "Thinking of you, all quiet?" Sarah typed back quickly. "For now, detective's fine. Talk soon." She didn't mention the hum. It felt too fragile, too easy to dismiss as nerves. Instead, she plated the half-cooked meal and ate at the table, fork scraping china, each bite mechanical. The hum faded as she finished, leaving an after-echo in her ears, a tinnitus of doubt. Was it worsening because she was listening harder? Expecting it? Night cloaked the house slowly. Streetlights pooling orange on the sidewalk outside. Sarah dimmed the lights, curling up on the couch with her book again, the thriller's pages a deliberate distraction. The protagonist was piecing together clues in a fog-shrouded lighthouse, parallels she tried to ignore. Around 10, the hum returned, layered now with faint clicks, like fingers tapping glass, deliberate and close. From the basement, no question. She marked her page and stood, the room tilting slightly from fatigue. The door drew her like a magnet, palm pressing flat against it. Warm wood, no vibration this time, but the clicks continued, irregular, as if counting. 1, 2, pause, 3. Isolation pressed in then, the suburbs quiet, a vast, indifferent sea. No footsteps on the porch, no cars humming past. Just her, the house, and the sounds below. Sarah backed away, grabbing her keys from the hook by the door. A drive, maybe, to the diner for pie and company. But as she reached for her coat, the clicks shifted, morphing into a soft rustle, like paper, unfolding in the dark. Her hand froze on the fabric. It wasn't fear exactly, more a hollowing out, a realization that the house wasn't just echoing. It was responding, mirroring her movements in some inscrutable way. She didn't leave. Instead, she climbed the stairs to bed, the creaks of the treads louder in her ears, each step a concession. The bedroom offered no sanctuary. Shadows pooled in the corners, the hallway lights glow too feeble to chase them fully. Lying there, covers pulled taut, Sarah listened to the night unfold. The rustle grew sporadic, interspersed with pauses that stretched like held breaths. Her mind raced through possibilities. Seismic activity from distant quakes, infrasound from the creek playing tricks on her perception. Rational threads fraying at the edges. By midnight, exhaustion pulled her under, but sleep was shallow. Dreams fragmented with echoes of hums and clicks weaving through half-formed rooms. She woke once, around 2 a.m., to silence so profound it rang. The detector's green light winked from downstairs, steady. But in that moment, clarity pierced the fog. The sounds weren't random. They adapted, grew with her attention, like a conversation she hadn't agreed to have. Dawn couldn't come soon enough, yet part of her dreaded it, the light revealing nothing, or worse, confirming the basement's vigil as her own unraveling. The house held still, waiting for her next move, its secrets coiled tight in the depths below. Saturday morning broke with a tentative sun, slicing through the clouds to dapple the kitchen floor in shifting patterns. Sarah stood at the counter, the carbon monoxide detector's green light a silent sentinel beside her as she poured a second cup of coffee. The night had left her hollowed, the fragmented dreams lingering like residue on glass, hums and clicks folding into her own voice, calling out from unseen corners. She sipped slowly, the bitterness grounding her, and glanced at the basement door. It remained shut, unassuming, as if mocking her vigil. Today, she'd face it head-on, no more half measures, a full sweep, flashlight in hand, every inch catalogued. If nothing turned up, she'd call the realtor, push for answers about the house's history beyond the bland records. The neighborhood stirred outside, a low murmur of life resuming, a distant lawnmower whirring to life, the mail truck's brakes squeaking at the corner. Sarah dressed in practical layers, jeans, a fleece pullover, sneakers laced tight, and grabbed a notebook from her desk, along with the heavy-duty flashlight from the garage. The battery clicked in fresh, its beam cutting sharp when she tested it against the wall. She paused at the door, key in the lock, turning it with deliberate slowness. The bolt slid back, the click echoing in the quiet kitchen. Deep breath. She flipped the switch, the basement bulb humming to life overhead, casting its pale wash down the stairs. The air below hit her first, cooler and thicker, carrying that same earthy tang, now laced with the faint must of undisturbed dust. Sarah descended step by step, the treads groaning under her weight, flashlight sweeping the concrete floor ahead. The space unfolded as before. Bare shelves sagging slightly against the far wall, the old washing machine hunkered in shadow like a relic from another era. Pipes snaked along the ceiling, dull metal glinting faintly. She moved methodically, notebook open, jotting notes. No visible cracks. Floor dry. Window sealed with caulk. The small ground-level window let in a sliver of diffused light, filtering through grime to paint faint stripes on the wall. No signs of entry, no nests or burrows. Just emptiness, the kind that amplified her own breathing. She circled the perimeter, tapping walls with the flashlight handle, listening for hollow spots or echoes that might explain the sounds. The concrete felt solid, unyielding, returning dull thuds. In the corner where the shelves met the foundation, she knelt, shining the beam into the narrow gap behind. Cobwebs trembled in the draft from her movement, but nothing stirred. No devices, no hidden speakers playing pranks from a forgotten era. Sarah straightened, a bead of sweat tracing her temple despite the chill. It was rational, this emptiness. The house was just a house. Old wiring, settling beams, her imagination filling the voids. But as she turned toward the stairs, a soft vibration hummed through the sole of her shoe, faint at first, like the distant rumble of a passing train. She froze, beam steady on the steps, the hum built, threading into the air, not from the pipes or the bulb, but from everywhere and nowhere, the walls themselves seeming to resonate. Her pulse quickened, syncing with it, and she pressed a hand to the nearest shelf, feeling the wood quiver under her palm. Not imagination. This was real, tangible, a frequency coiling around her like invisible smoke. She whispered, "What is this?" The words swallowed by the space, unanswered. The hum shifted then, fracturing into layers, the low drone underpinned by those familiar clicks, now closer as if originating inches away. Sarah spun, flashlight arcing across the room, shadows leaping like startled figures. The washing machine sat inert, yet the clicks emanated from behind it, a rapid tattoo, like Morse code tapped out in haste. She edged closer, heart hammering, and peered around the bulky frame, nothing but a rusted drain pipe and a patch of stained concrete. But the clicks persisted, insistent, drawing her in. She reached out, fingers brushing the cold metal of the machine, and in that instant, the sounds morphed. Clicks blending into a whisper, fragmented syllables weaving through the hum. Not her name this time, but fragments of her own mutterings from the night before. Just a house. Settling. Nothing. Her breath caught, the notebook slipping from her fingers to thump on the floor. How? She'd spoken those words upstairs, alone, doors closed. The whisper repeated, softer, echoing her doubts back at her in a voice that wasn't quite hers. Distorted, intimate, as if the basement had been listening all along, absorbing her words and replaying them in this subterranean theatre. Panic flickered, not sharp, but insidious, burrowing into her certainty. She backed away, beam shaking now, illuminating the stairs like a lifeline. The hum swelled in response, filling the space, pressing against her eardrums until it felt like pressure in her skull. Visions flashed unbidden, the house not as shelter, but as a vessel, its walls porous to thoughts, sounds born from her own unraveling mind projected outward. She bolted up the stairs, flashlight clutched like a talisman, slamming the door behind her and twisting the lock with trembling hands. The kitchen swam into focus, sunlight streaming through the window, the coffee pot still warm on the counter. Normal. Safe. But the hum lingered in her bones, a residual vibration that no amount of deep breathing could dispel. Sarah sank into a chair, head in hands, the notebook forgotten below. It wasn't external, not animals, not mechanics. The sounds were internal, extensions of her isolation, her fresh start curdling into something solitary and self-reflective. The house hadn't made them, she'd fed them. Her unease birthing echoes in the quiet. Hours passed in a daze. She avoided the door, busying herself with laundry in the upstairs hamper, holding towels with mechanical precision while the afternoon light waned. Elena called around 4, her voice a cheerful anchor through the speaker. "How's the mystery novel treating you? Still hearing things?" Sarah forced lightness into her reply. "All quiet now. Probably just me being paranoid." But the words tasted hollow, the hum's memory underscoring them. They talked about weekend hikes along the creek trails, plans for brunch at the diner, normalcy stitched back into place. Dusk settled softly, the suburb glowing under sodium lamps, fireflies blinking in the yard like hesitant signals. Sarah ate a light dinner, yogurt and fruit from the fridge, sitting on the porch swing, the chains creaking gently in the breeze. Neighbors' voices drifted over fences. Laughter from a backyard barbecue, 2 houses down, the sizzle of burgers on a grill. Life continued, oblivious. She watched a family walk their golden retriever past, the dog's tail wagging in lazy arcs, and felt a pang of envy for their untroubled rhythm. Inside, the house waited, lights low, shadows pooling in the hallway. Sarah checked the detector one last time, green, steady, before climbing to bed. She left the basement door cracked, not out of bravery, but resignation. Locking it felt futile now, a barrier against something formless. Sleep came in fits, the quiet not reassuring but expectant, as if the house held its breath with her. Around dawn, a single click echoed from below, soft, final, like a door latching shut. She didn't stir, eyes open in the grey light filtering through the blinds. By morning, Sarah packed a small bag for Elena's place in the city, just for the weekend. Space to breathe, to reset. The house would stand empty, its sounds perhaps fading without an audience, or maybe they'd persist, patient in the silence, waiting for her return. As she loaded the car, keys jingling in her pocket, she glanced back at the Victorian facade, porch rails straight, windows dark. It looked ordinary, a fixture on Elm Street like any other, but deep in its foundations something stirred, a subtle echo of her own quiet doubts, unbound and lingering long after she drove away.